Now, before you climb in your beds, I've got one more story for you of a very special Christmas Eve and a magical present, too. A long time ago, in a forest, there lived an elf named Tinderbox. He didn't like anybody to come to his house. If he saw you, he'd start throwing rocks. Oh, he was a miserable elf, that's for sure, with a sign that he'd put on some blocks. It said, "Children, beware, don't be seen anywhere. Stay away from my house, Tinderbox." Every Christmas, that elf would go running up to houses and stand in the yard. He'd watch all the children through windows, just hoping to catch them off guard. Then he'd write down their names in his book and leap onto the back of his fox. All the way to the North Pole he laughed, shouting, "I am the tattle elf, Tinderbox." Then he would pound on the big cheery door, which opened by magic by itself, and he'd throw in his book full of names of the children he'd spied on himself. And Santa would say, "Merry Christmas! I can see by your striped yellow socks it's my grumpy old friend from the forest, the elf that they call Tinderbox. Now, why are you always so sour, especially around Christmas Eve? Why do you spy on my children? Just who do you think you deceive? You are always looking for trouble, for times when my kids make mistakes. Why don't you write down the good things? What a happier feeling that makes." So the elf would fly home in his anger and hammer his fists on the rocks, for in spite of himself he felt sorry to be such an elf as Tinderbox. One night, as he lay in his bed, he heard someone knock on his door. He crept to the window and saw something he'd never seen before. There, on his porch, stood the children, the ones he had put in his book. They were laughing and calling his name so loud that his whole ceiling shook. "Go away from my house," cried the elf, "or I'll just as soon start throwing rocks." But they laughed even more and exclaimed, "Merry Christmas, old elf, Tinderbox." And then Santa was there on the porch, with his reindeer parked way up above. "Some of my children just wanted to show that Christmas is the time to give love. Come out of your dark house, old elf, and come fly along in my sleigh. And maybe you'll learn about children, and maybe you'll have fun today." Santa pulled the old elf up beside him and sat him right down on the toys. He took him to each house with children to teach them about Christmas joys. And the old elf saw poor children sleeping with no pillows tucked under their heads, who had nothing at all of their own, but who smiled as they lay in their beds. And it made Tinderbox feel special that Santa would take him along and let him help fill up the stockings. And he knew all those years he'd been wrong. For Santa Claus knows about elves, as he knows about all creatures living. The magical feeling of Christmas is found in the pleasure of giving. So when Santa flies up over rooftops, look inside for those striped yellow socks and listen to hear, "Merry Christmas to all," from Santa and old Tinderbox.